जी की फतेह वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी
वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह जी। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह जी. Ravinder Singh here, welcoming you back. I hope everyone had a great summer. Um, so the topic for today is the passages that we collectively call Lama, which are the underlying structure of the Sikh marriage ceremony, or Anand Karaj as it's called. The way I'm going to approach we are going to do the first Lao today, not all four. And the way I wish to approach this is really to be able to extract from this application for our everyday lives, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, all of us are married people. And so I think if the Sikh community at some point adopted this metaphor of a bridal soul, on the passage to union with the divine spouse, and if we kind of are using these to instruct ourselves, there must be a good reason. And I'm trying to figure out, how does this apply to me in my day-to-day life? And I'm hoping that you can help me do that today. So with that said, just a little brief background on Anand Karaj, because I was curious, how did it get this name, Anand Karaj? And I did a little bit of, I tried to do some research, but didn't really find any answer to it. One possible explanation that I found was that we know that the gurus were rejected, existing rituals and rites and so on, starting with Guru Nanak himself, who had established a particular pattern at Kartarpur, a practice that included a recitation of the Japji, Sodar, and the singing of the Aarti. However, it seems to me that some of the old practices continued, as they do even today, some of the old Hindu practices. And somewhere along the line, at least according to this explanation that I read, was that somewhere down the line, Guru Amar Das's composition, the Anand, was incorporated as the conclusion of any rite of passage. So in other words, if you had a rite of passage, you may still follow the old ritual, but you would conclude with the Anand Sahib being read. And I think that is how it became called, the marriage ceremony became called Anand Sahib. I also discovered that the Anand Marriage Act was actually implemented in 1909. There is really no record of when this was practiced first. We know, for instance, that Ranjit Singh, in Ranjit Singh's time, in all of his marriages, there is absolutely no mention of this. So it is reasonable to assume that this is a practice that started in the early part of the 20th century, 1909 being the date when the Anand Marriage Act was passed. And I believe it was amended in 2012, where now it is required for Sikhs to actually obtain a license. I could be mistaken, but I know it was amended. So tonight then, as I mentioned earlier, my goal is to really focus on the first of the four passages that we call Lama, which are in the form of a chant, which is a poetic form consisting of four stanzas. And before I get to it, I just want to touch very briefly on the role of marriage as a social institution. From what I know and understand, most, if not all, societies have some form of contractual, social, and religious sanction for a marriage. The Jews, the Christians, Islam, Hindus, they all consider marriage to be God-given, and that is true of in Sikhi as well, so where it has social, contractual, legal, religious sanctions. And I posted an outline of that process. I'd written this process once for the benefit of non-Sikhs a while back, and I hope it's on the blog. I don't know, Harvinder, if you got a chance to put it out there, but I'm not going to go through it. I just want to say that um, the message of the marriage, the lama, is something that we need to pay attention to, where the instruction from Guru Amar Das is that we need to transcend the physical and social elements of a marriage. They are necessary, no doubt, but simple physical union or a social interaction or a social communication is really not the end of it, and he is asking us to look beyond it, to become one light in two bodies. So the message itself is, as I said, contained in 4 stanzas, and we are going to start with the first one. So what I will do is I am going to actually read out the passage first, if I can actually find it. Yes, I think I can. So actually, let me go line by line. So it's in the rag Suhi, Suhi Mahalla Chotha. And the Suhi rag, as most of you know, is actually a rag of longing, the longing of a bride for her divine spouse. So it is appropriately included in that rag Suhi. And when we did a Punjabi discussion on this, there was quite a bit of discussion on the color Suha and Laav, the distinction between the Suha color, which is really a muddy off color of red, and red being a signifier of spiritual gold. But I will not go into that today. I just want to start with as I said earlier, my desire is to see how this really applies to us. So that said, the first line is, Har pehladi Laav, Parvarti Karam Dridaya Balaram Jiyo. Har, as we all know, refers to our authentic or inner self, the root, the mool, as Gurjit Singh Ji is so fond of saying. Pehladi is first. Laav. Now, when I tried to look up the meaning of Laav, I actually came across meanings that were diametrically opposite. I found someone had used the meaning as to break away, but some others had used to attach, lagao, lagan, or devotion. My personal bias is more towards to attach oneself. So that's how I'll take the meaning. Parvarti. Again, this is an orientation. It's usually used in contrast to Nivritti. And I was very curious because, I've seen translations where this word is used to mean a householder's path. And so I was curious as to what the etymology of this word really was. And what I found was quite revealing. So when I looked up the Sanskrit dictionary for the root of this word, it turns out that it actually has an association. Words are like personalities, right? I mean, they hang out with other words, and that kind of gives you an idea of really who they are. And so I found quite interestingly that this word actually is keeping company with words like parivartan, which is change. It also means preferred. It also means to be in a state of preparedness. It also means subsequent, that which happens after, parivarti. So interesting meanings attached to it. Karam, action, but here it seems to me it is important to make the distinction that we are really speaking about the perversions of the mind. And so this relate to the mind, not so much to our bodily actions, because one flows from the other. Dridaya to me, at least in my own understanding, means to establish firmly, to take root. It seems to be a degree more deeper than just padaya, padana and dridana. Balaram Jiyo, this is referring to the source of our strength, which is again Akal Purkh. So when the first line goes, Har Parvarti Laav Parvarti Karam Dridaya, Balaram Jio, I read it as saying to me, and I was trying to strip it of all its cultural sort of connotations. I mean, how would I say this if I had to understand it? So I understood the first line to say, in the first Laav, an understanding slash preparing for the preferred way to Hari is established. In other words, you are to adopt the way. There is a way, there is a preferred way, and that is what you need to adopt through Balaram Jio. The second line then goes, Bani Brahma Ved Taram Dido, Pap Tajaya Balaram Jio. Bani I read as Guru, Bani Guru, Guru hai Bani. Brahma I read as creator or our highest mind, if you will. Ved, I'm not reading Ved as the Rig Ved, but I'm reading Ved as knowledge, spiritual knowledge. Dharam Drido, again, becoming established in Dharam. I am not going to digress on the meaning of Dharam because it has many connotations. But suffice to say that it actually comes from the root dri, to hold, something that holds things together. And in this instance, it means something that is holding the cosmos together. So just to make it easy, the way I'm reading Taram in Gurbani is to actually, this equates to Naam and Hukam. If you look at the 16th stanza of the Japji, the All Taram Daya Ka Put Tok Thabra Kyajan Sut is really referring to Hukam. So that's how I'm reading that here. Pap Tajaya. To me, Pap is an interesting concept. So I was interested in actually understanding what Pap is. We generally translate it as sin. And so I tried to figure out what sin was. And what I came up with was that sin actually refers to missing the mark constantly. In other words, you're aiming at something, but you're really missing the point, missing the mark. And so it actually refers to a lack of clarity. That's how I'm taking Pap to mean. So when it says Pap Tajaya, it means I am dispelling confusion. I'm actually obtaining clarity. Balaram Jio again. So how would Bani Brahma Ved Dharam Drido Pap Tajaya Balaram Jio read? So I would say Bani Brahma Ved is to obtain instruction from Bani. Instruction of what? Brahma, the Brahm Gyan, as we say. To obtain that knowledge and establish yourself in Dharam. Tajaya, dispel confusion, become clear. That's how I read the second line. The third one, Dharam Drido Haranyam Te Avo, Simrit Naam Dridaya. Now, again, this is poetry, so we are bound to see some level of repetition. But here, how do I understand this line, or how I would read it? It seems to me it is saying, Dharam Drido, how do you establish yourself in Dharam? By Haranam Tyavo. Haranam Tyavo, reflection, contemplation on the knowledge of Hari that you're obtaining from Gurbani. Simrit Naam Dridaya. Simrit here to me is the inner process of Simran. In other words, become established in Dharam by obtaining the knowledge that you are from Gurbani through this inner process. Because once you get clarity, then through the process of Simran, you begin to recondition your mind. You begin to assimilate these virtues that Gurbani wants you to inhabit inside of your mind. So that process begins. You begin to take these instructions from the Guru. And then the fourth line, Satgur Gur Pura Aradho, Sab Kilvik Pap Gavaya. To me, this is just an expansion on the third line, which says that imbibe the teachings of the Satguru, And Kilvik Pop, again, is just a synonym as far as I'm concerned. But I think the reason this is being emphasized again here is that you begin with clarity, you understand what the change is, you begin to take instruction, and then now you are on the path. You're an apprentice now, and your self-awareness is gradually increasing. In other words, you're now an apprentice of the Satguru. And then what happens? That is in the last line here, where Sahaj Anand Hoa Vatbhagi Man Har Har Meetha Laya. So Sahaj Anand Hoa, meaning that blissful state of Anand arises spontaneously. No effort involved. Once you're on this process, Sahaj Anand Hoa, the state of Anand will just pop up spontaneously, magically. It'll happen. Vadbhagi man har har meetha laya. Vadbhagi, I read as the rare individual, the blessed individual who experiences this state. What happens to him? He begins to find the divine will agreeable and sweet. Har har meetha, sweet, agreeable. So he begins to find that different state of his mind agreeable. Whereas when he began, he was more immersed in the ego mind, so to speak. So those are the lines. So I was trying to see that if I had to write this in contemporary idiom, if I had to explain this without all these cultural references, to her and now, how would I go about explaining this? And I'll share it with you. So I would have to say that, the first step, I'm just doing it line by line. So the first step to become centered in your true self, because this is, I think, what this is talking about, is to adopt the right path, right? You need to know what the right way is to get to your destination. Simple as that. And Pravritti Marg, there is a preferred way, no question about it, as far as Gurbani is concerned. So the preferred way is turn to Gurbani and get clarity. Paap Tajaya. Get clarity on the path of Dharam. Then practice Dharam by constant Simran. Reflection, contemplation, there are a multitude of practices, but the point is you are now in constant Simran. And this is the way to reorient, recondition your mind by apprenticing yourself to the true Guru. You will erase all confusion. And in such a way, you will obtain the blissful quality of spontaneous awareness. And your mind will find the divine will to be agreeable and sweet. This, says Nanak, is the first step. So that's how I thought I sort of put it in just everyday language, which is something I really, really want to do with Gurbani, is not get too complicated, but to kind of just say it very simply. So in conclusion, as I said earlier on, I am very interested, I'm less interested, I understand that Gurbani is addressing the inner mind and it's all about our inner lives and so on and so forth. But I think that may be limiting the impact of Gurbani because it is just as applicable outside. Because if it weren't, then what's the point? So I have a few points here where I said, how would I apply this to a married life? Some of it comes from my own experience, and I would like to actually call on each one of you to share your experiences. But this is what I basically think about how this applies to a marriage. So a marriage, like a spiritual aspirant, I mean, it is a new start. It's a new beginning. And so when you are actually at a new beginning in your life, you know that it's going to require adjustment and adaptation. So I think you need to be very conscious of that it is going to require adjustment. So the first step to me in a successful marriage is to make that affirmation, to make that resolution that you are going to make that change. So the question then is, what is that change? What are you going to change? Now, in the passage, we found that what was being asked to change was your established patterns of behavior and conditioning, right? Haume. That's what it is. So therefore, you do the same thing in your real life and in your marriage. You begin by adjusting, modifying the conditioning of your mind and the way you do things. How do you do it? It is saying in the passage that knowledge of Hari, Gyan, is a prerequisite. So similarly, any spouse, I think, must do an equal amount of dhyan and aradhana, not only of one's haume, but also of one's spouse. Because to me, we are all, after all, concrete manifestations of that divine spouse, right? So we are smaller spouses, but we have that essence in us. So it behooves us to actually do the dhyan and aradhan of our spouses as well, while we are doing it of our own blind spots. So you begin to pay attention to the other. You begin to try and understand the other person. You begin to put yourself in the other person's shoes. You see? And then once you get on this path, I find that things begin to change. You're able to anticipate your spouse. But very importantly, you will find that your spouse will not be able to push or press your buttons. In other words, you will cease to have knee-jerk reactions. And I find that knee-jerk reactions, because of your established habits, is the problem, right? Most of the time. So I feel like change, understanding the spouse, reflection, contemplation, not only on the divine spouse, but a parallel process that runs in conjunction. And there is a symbiosis between the two that we must establish. That, I think, is how this is applicable to our daily lives. And we will do the subsequent passages and see how they further affect our marriages. That's what I have for tonight. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So Harvinder, you're the moderator.
Oh, I am?
I mean, you want me to moderate? I can moderate. It's okay.
Sure, and I think we have other people joined in. We have now Ripudaman Virji also, Bajwa Virji also, and I think Gurjeet Virji also.
Okay, so I have said my piece. I mean, I'm open to questions, but as I said, I would like you to use some personal examples from your marriage and share with us how you've adopted some of this process into your own lives. So I've talked about it as being a parallel process that has symbiosis, right? And I have applied it in my life. I will be the first one to tell you that. And it's worked wonders. So, Chetandeep, do you want to be the first one to go?
Hanji Virji, sorry, you will hear some background noise because I am
okay.
babysitting too. So, thank you for explaining to us what's going on in the Shabad. I can share something personal too, and I have a question. So let me first start by sharing something personal, and then I can share my question. So
sure.
I think the Parvirti Karam, or rather the change that I have seen in myself in recent last couple of months is that I have stopped. Okay. I've started doing two things. Hanji. So I have stopped complaining and I have stopped expecting, especially from my wife. Earlier I used to. Okay. So earlier I used to all the time expect from my wife that she should do this, or take care of kids or whatever. I stopped expecting completely and rather relied on my own self. And I've also stopped complaining. I think both of these go hand in hand, and they have helped I think in last 1 month has been very easy for me in my own married life due to these changes that I made.
Mhm.
So just sharing that, coming back to the Shabad, what I felt, I actually felt pretty intimidated after reading this Shabad. Maybe intimidated is not the right word. In what sense I'm using this word is the bar seems to be to me very high. So when I read this, the second line, Paap Tajaya Balram Ji. So what I see here, and so when I read the word Paap, I simply replace it with the word Home without even thinking. And if you go back a Shabad, this is the second Shabad in this Sirlekh. So the first Shabad actually talks about Paap Gavaya and Paap being Home. So to me, the bar seems very high that in this first Peli Laav, he's already talking about that the Home is gone and there is Sahaj and Anand. And I'm like, we're not even close. It's like, that's the source of my like intimidation to see like that's the bar Guru Sahib is setting for us in the Pehli Love. So these are my thoughts, Rishi.
Hari, thanks for sharing. I think, whether you think of Paap as Haume or whether you think of it like I have in this passage as getting clarity or missing the mark. I mean, Haume is missing the mark, right? I mean, because when you identify with the ego, with the Haume, you have missed the mark pretty much. But my sense is, Chaitanya, that I think in the first step, this is really a description of what will happen, not something that has already happened. Because what is being asked of us in the first round is to get on the path, on the preferred path, right? And then, and to turn to the Guru for instruction, for clarity. And then you will eventually get to that place, Sahaj Anand. So I'm not sure. I mean, let's see what the others have to say. So I'm not sure that it is something that happens already, but I think it is something that will happen. So Dilpreet Singh ji, we have a lot of people, so I have to run through everybody.
Okay. So no, thank you, Virji. I think you have done a lot of thinking, and thanks for sharing.
Hey, 36 years of marriage, man.
Oh, okay. I think the first thing is Guruji is telling us, and he is softening the ground. He is explaining to both that, okay, be open for the change, because now you are getting into a journey where you both will be together, and you both might be coming with some strong conditioning, as you explained. So be open for the change, and then have a discussion. And then he's saying that collectively look towards the Guru and discuss your opinions, and then look towards the Guru for the right path, and then collectively develop a way for you guys to move forward and use Guru as the guidance. And then always be aware of your responsibilities and work hard towards it. And then he is towards the end, he is saying that being patient and then going on this path will bring the change. And then you guys will be, this is the first step, and then the what will happen, he's taking us to the next steps. So I had some clarity coming into, and now I think with this discussion, as always, it will change, and it will be, I will be better off with some better understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Ekunkar ji.
I actually want to, I want to offer, I could like talk for an hour on this, and I'm not going to. But one of the things that I feel strongly about when it comes to the Lavan is that with the Lavan and the Grishtashram, the Guru changed the game of enlightenment. So if you look at kind of older systems, the love that liberates is the love between the student and the Guru. And the union between the student and the Guru is the union that takes you to the experience of the divine. And for many thousands of years, that was a limited reality, because you had to be a man to be a guru and you had to be a man to be a student. So the whole journey to enlightenment excluded women completely. What the Laav does that's so radical, in my opinion, is that the guru says, you're going to liberate by loving each other as man and woman, or as spouses, or husband and wife, or, you know, you're gonna find liberation through each other under my guidance. And he redirects the path of enlightenment back to the house and the heart. And I think this was part of his amazing social spiritual rehabilitation of the female sex that had gotten trampled pretty hard by a lot of philosophy, spiritual, you know, teaching. So I think sometimes it's worthwhile to just step back and recognize the radicalness of the ceremony, that that we're called to find liberation by loving each other, and that this idea of, you know, conquering the pop, however you want to, you know, define it. I define it as, you know, the habits which harm myself and cause pain to others. That we can only conquer that through a sincere, committed, devoted living for another person, which marriage calls us to do. You know, like, marriage calls us out of, it's all about me. Marriage calls us into a consciousness of we, and that becomes the sharpening stone for the mind and the heart to reach the experience of union. So I'm not going to say much about the first round itself. I don't want to take up too much time with everyone here, but I did want to offer that perspective.
Thank you very much, Ekunkar. And I might just very quickly add to what you've said. I mean, look, Guru Nanak, is all about empowerment. And so when you say this is radical, I absolutely agree with you. So the empowerment is not just of women, but it's of all castes, right? I mean, he's extending this to everybody without distinction of caste. So in the old days, you had to be a Brahmin pretty much. Women were, of course, excluded, but so were the low caste. So that's a good point that you bring up. And the other thing, the radical love that you're talking about is, I think that what is being asked of us here, eventually, Path Jaya, even in a marriage, in a worldly marriage, is to actually kill your ego. So it's a very radical thought to be able to subsume your ego to another human being who has an ego, you see. So to me, that is even more radical, but we'll come back to it. Let me move on here. Anji, Gurdeep Saran ji, Montreal, Sasikal ji.
Your explanation is wonderful. I'm very thrilled because you gave a wonderful explanation of this. But from my point of view, if you go one paragraph above this, where this everything starts, this one is saying here that our soul is crying to meet the Satguru or Guru, where the soul can discard its sin and the faults what he had up till now. So this is the beginning of actually this whole, even if you go a little bit above Sui Malla Chautha, then that's where this whole issue starts from there. This starts from Rag Sui Malla Chautha Shantikar Pella. Once we read Shantikar Pella, there the soul is crying, it became aware of all its sins and all that, and is trying to how to get rid of. Then it prays, let Vaheguru make me meet with Satguru or Guru so that I may eradicate all the sins. What is this part? The bird in Guru Granth Sahib again, we have given 10 parts. First part, I will go very quickly. Pehle pyar laga than dudh, duje mai baap ki sudh, tije pahya bhabi pev, chauthe pyar panni khed, panve khan peen ki taat, sheme kaam na puche jaat. So jete ras sharir ke tete lage dukh. Now, by this time, he had been into all these raskas, the bodies, raskas. No, he cried because all these were none of them helping the soul. Now, the seventh part comes, Satme Sanjikiya Karbas. That's the stage when it gets with a married life. How to pass your time in the married life. So we have two examples given, you already very well explained, Ravindra, that one is the same system work with our soul, with the Supreme Lord, and with ourselves and with our wife. How we can to get close? We are not, we cannot be at the same level mentally. It's never possible. Neither our face, neither shakal mil sakdi, na akal. So then, only the tool in between is the sabad. System is here how to get close to each other with the worldly wife, with this household wife, and the same how it will apply with the soul as a bride to the Lord.
Ranavirji,
Anji, can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you. Just be aware we have quite a few people following you. So,
Okay, a few things here. I read this one and I understood your explanation. One thing is, I don't know, as you said, when it was instituted for the marriage of the Sikh marriage and when it came into being, whether Guru Sahib wrote that with that intention or we just made it like that. And I don't think it is, we are talking about how we can adopt it. It's not between husband and wife, it's between any two individuals. That's the message which is coming out to me. Not that I have to, how to deal with my wife or my wife is going to deal with me. That's one issue I have with that. And the other thing, what I'm looking at that is you started out very nicely and you interpreted the word love as attachment. But my understanding, the way I think is, it is a breaking away. The message is very simple and very clear. Clear message in the sense that how do we break away from the pravritti karam? Okay, this is what Guru Sahib is talking about. He is talking about how it is a start of that breakaway process we are talking about. And when we talk about the words pop, and we're talking, that reference of the reference to pop is not the pop the way we are talking about. The reference to this pop word here is pravriti karam, the one which is mentioned in the previous line. So it is not that we take the word pop from the concept we have been talking about. Here it has a specific meaning. So the way I understand is Guru Sahib is very clearly stating that how the bright soul is going to attach to the ultimate Akal Purkh. The very first thing what it has to do is to break away from that. How do it break away? By adopting dharam. Dharam means just the good things. It's not that the dharma, again, we become so intellectual, we try to slice each word over here, whether that's the message out there or not. I think message is very simple, that, okay, you adopt the good ways, and that will try to eradicate the pop. The word pop is pravritti karam. And then further it goes on, the same thing. The Guru Sahib is basically talking about the same thing here. And that how to attach with, this is the first step to break away and then go ahead to the second stage.
Hanji.
So let me leave it there because of that.
Thank you, thank you. It seems like Ranavirji has a slightly different take on Pravritti Karam. I read it as being the preferred way because that was the etymological meaning of the word Pravritti. So get on the preferred path. There is an opposite path, but we can talk about that offline. I need to be able to get to everybody here. Not there. Okay, Ripadaman, let's go to you.
You guys can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Quick one. Number one was the Laav. The meaning of Laav, I think, is to break away from. So, used in the sense of to break away from old ways. Yeah, and
can you share the source with me? Because I came across that, but I also came across an opposite meaning.
I see. No, I
share
have
the source with me. Yeah.
The online dictionary.
No, carry on. I mean, just send it to me. You carry on with your chain of thought. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay. So, and the implied meaning behind is that if you're breaking away from an old way, then you are establishing a new way. So I also think that, at least to me, Guruji never mentioned the marriage ceremony anywhere here. So the Laav, I am not taking it as a marriage ceremony, but it does beautifully apply to, that ceremony as well. Um, so here, like you said, it's breaking away from your old tradition. So parvirti karam dridaya, then you are stepping on to the new tradition. And then pap tajaya, I would agree with you. It's basically when you are concentrating on Ved, the true knowledge, like you said, then that act itself basically will lead you to, Taj Pap in the future. Or maybe the better interpretation is that you have turned away from the self-centered activities. That would be the path, the self-centered activities. So it's not that they have ended suddenly, magic has happened. It's that you have made this determination in mind that no, that's what I don't want to do. I want to follow the wisdom, the spiritual wisdom, that path, the Ved Dharam. So that's how I'm interpreting that line.
Tikaji, thank you. Thank you
That's
for your
it.
insight.
Yeah.
This concept actually started in the Shri Rag by the same Mahalla Chautha. ਵਿਆਹ हुआ मेरे बाबुला गुरमुखे हरि पाया अज्ञान अंधेरा कट्टिया गुरज्ञान प्रचंड बलाया. So how to be in association with your Hari? The chants are all individual. There are 4 different methodologies have been used from ages, and he's trying to describe the first and the easiest one. Like we are at that stage, we have the Gurbani, that's Bani Brahma Ved, Taram Dero. Means we have to understand what the Taram is all about. Taram is only taking you up to full. Taram is not taking you to Fal yet. Fal comes from Parmeshwar. But at least with this text, if we understand and follow, we can reach that stage. And there's also Har Sat Satte Mere Babala Harjan Mirs Janj Suhandi. Then he says Pevakade Hari Jap Suheli. So that's the first stage, which is already Hari Suhandi. So Pevakada is here when we are doing it in this life, doing the jap. And then within this life, we'll attain the next stage. So that's, I think, the whole aim is of how to be in oneness with yourself. And then the Parmeshwar will do the kirpa. You'll merge with him. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.
And thank you, Guruji. Thank you, everybody, for your insights. I think that what I've picked up is the fact that Pap and Haume are being used, being equated to one another is, I think, a good way of looking at things. What is being asked of us eventually is to basically transcend your Haume. And I think, where are you going to practice this except in your real life, right? I mean, this cannot be just a mental game. So the arena where you are going to actually practice subordinating, submerging your ego, Haume, is going to be right here where you live. So, and, to Ripudaman's point about, not being sure if this was written for a marriage ceremony, of course not. I mean, he wasn't just sitting there thinking about a marriage ceremony. The fact is that we've adapted it to our marriage ceremonies because we have found as a community, obviously, we have found a very interesting parallel. And we have found passages which can apply to dealing with our spouses. And to Ranavirji's point, that it goes beyond even just spouses, it goes to 2 individuals. So we've had a good spectrum of thinking. Ekonkarji has, I think, brought out a very important point about how radical. And I think I would stress that we ought to think of Guru Nanak as radical in everything that he has done. We should just not look at him as some retiring old mystic. We've got pictures of him as some fellow sitting out there with a mala in his hand and eyes half shut. He's a radical revolutionary. So yes, let's start the second round. We have about, we have about 5 or 7 minutes. Let me start with you, Chetandeep. Any final thoughts?
Viri, I just want to share this thing to Ripudaman's question and your thing that I think we have seen this pattern multiple times in Gurbani that Guru Sahib takes an example from the outer world and take it to the inner world. So I definitely think that here he is taking an example of the prevalent ritual of marriage. The reason I am so sure is that if you read the lines previous to these, Har Pehladi Laav Kabirti Karam Didraya Balram Ji, just the lines previous to these actually use these words. Aya Lagan Ganai Hirde Tan Umahiya Balram Jio. And then Jab Sajin Sune Kar Aaye. And then this one, Guni Gyani Beh Mata Pakaya Tere Tat Divai. Var Paya Purak Agam. So he is talking about Tere, Sajan, Lagan, Var, and everything in this Shabad, the Shabad previous to this one. So I definitely think the context is one word of marriage, but Guru Sahib has taken an example of the outer world and taken it inside.
And
Thank
we
you.
pulled it out again. And you're absolutely right, because there are also the concept of a suhagan and a duhagan that he uses. You know, so yes, absolutely, very point very well made and well taken. Let's see, who do I go to now? Dilpreet.
Anji, I had one confusion in my mind that the culture which we inherited or we sprouted from, the Hindu culture, had 7 rounds, right? So why we had only 4 lamps? Was there any significant, any thoughts there or no?
I will let the others respond to that. Ekunkarji, do you want to respond to Dilpreet's confusion about why 4 and not 7? Were we just trying to be different?
I wouldn't even attempt to answer that. Today. 4 doors open to all. You know, there's something very sacred about number 4, and it's also past, present, future, and unknown. But that's my perspective.
Okay. All right. Gurdeep Virji, Montreal, any final thoughts? Why do we have 4 and not 7?
Sure, because there are 4 stages of the spiritual stages within us.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter it was 7, because that's a Brahmin bath.
Okay.
And Guru revolt against this. When Guru Nanak got married, he put a kyunkar on a piece of paper and took 4 rounds around it. And then this was first time was practiced at the marriage of Bibi Pani, Guru Ramdas Ji's daughters. Then they put this 4 lama into it, because they wanted to, as a radical, just like Guru Nanak Dev Ji was a revolutionary, they want to avoid those going around the fire and those kind of things, you know, burning ghee and all that. So this is a new system started by Guru Nanak around Ekinkar, Guru Ramdas Ji, the marriage of Bibi Pani. First time this 4 lama padhenge. That's the first time they read this thing. And this is performed in this way. And these are the stages of the spiritual stages, actually.
Okay, so Dilpreet, I think that answers it. 4 spiritual stages. So according to Gurdeep Singh Virji, the practice began with Guru Nanak, you know, placing a piece of paper with Ekokar. This is a Sakhi that we've read, and also Bibi Pani. But even if that is true, I might add that this was not obviously an established practice up until the early 20th century, because I know my father was married in 1920, I believe it was, and he certainly didn't marry with Anand Karaj. At least that's what he told me. So, and it was not an established practice. Let's see now. Rana Virji, any final thoughts? We have a few minutes left.
No, I don't. Hello?
Hanji, Hanji,
Hanji. I just want to say, again, the word love to me was, I still strongly feel, that's my opinion anyways, is a breakaway, the way I think about that. And the other question Dilpreet Virji just asked, I think we are comparing apples and oranges. That why they have 7, why we have 4. Guru Sahib never went out and see what other people are doing. He came up with this Bani, and we have adopted this Bani and this Lama, and it is 4. Maybe what Gurdeep Virji has said, there is a rationale for that, but I don't know the reason for that. But I just look at that, there's no apples and oranges we're comparing. That's my
opinion. Hanji, thank you very much. So when it comes to the definition of words, I mean, Laav, I think we are all offering opinions or something we may have read online on the internet. So my request, so I certainly have come across both. I have not been able to find it in the Sanskrit dictionaries, because a lot of these words I've been able to find, like parvarti, as I shared with you, means the preferred way. So it has to be the way to get on, or the way of preparedness, right? So I have not been able to find laav. I'm willing to accept either. It either makes sense, I mean, to break away from established patterns of thought, or attaching yourself, or you know, the idea of union, or being one with your hari. Either way, it makes sense. But I think if somebody has an authoritative source, please share it with us. Would appreciate it.
The Pravirti and Narvirti are two. Mandi jedi soch hai, that is Narvirti, because it is Nar. Re Nar Garv Kundal jab aa jaye. When he leaves that and goes to the Hari's Sabha, or his habits, that is Pravirti Karam. Secondly, Laav comes from the word Lagav. And if you read Dasam Granth and this, there are only 4 types of methods with which you can associate with Hari. The second one is what Guru Angad did from Guru Nanak, but Guru Nanak only had Bani. He didn't meet Kabir ji directly. He only had the Bani. Kabir also didn't have anything, just the Bani. But later ones had Satguru in front of them. So these are the first two rounds. They are individual. Don't need to read all 4. You can use either of the 4. That is what has been discussed.
Can you share, and our time is out. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us, and hopefully we will see you next Wednesday with the second Laav. And hopefully by then we'll have some clarity and simplicity. Thank you very much. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.